What if planning your garden was like playing The Sims or another civilization game? Figuring out where you're going to lay down the roads, where your power infrastructure is going to be before you plant a single house. If I were to plan a garden in 2025, that is how I would do it. When I first started planning a garden, in order for it to be a backyard grocery store, I approached it like I always did planning my garden. I thought first about each individual tomato plant, pepper plant, and where they would go, and I tried to build it out from there, and it was chaos. It frankly wasn't a lot of fun until it dawned on me, what if I treat it like I'm building a thriving mini civilization? Hi, I'm Randall, and after years of trial and error, I've discovered that when you're planning your garden, if you first focus on the environment like sun paths and the infrastructure that you'll need to support your garden goals, you will have the most productive garden yet, and planning is a whole lot easier. I've created over the years several urban gardens, and recently, a few years ago, moved across the country and had to start all over again. And like a lot of times in life, when you're forced to start over again, you discover new things in that process. Some of the things in the past work well, while you find out that they don't, and you discover new things. And I've boiled those new things down to a few basic steps that I think any gardener can use to have the most productive garden yet. Before I plant a single plant, I like to take a step back and observe the space first. Note where the sun shines more often. Note shapes of shade that's created at other parts of the day. And then, like I'm building a city in a game, I start to create these areas. I like to start on graph paper, sketching these areas out in these like large swaths of organic spaces. And then I like to move into an app called GrowVeg. Bonus tip. If you're struggling to imagine these shapes and these sun paths, just get your phone out and take a picture from the same spot, framing it the same way, different times of the day. Try to pick days that are sunny so that you'll start to see the areas and the patterns in your space develop. Now that you have a great picture of your overall area and you know where you could plant vegetables, you're going to want to move inward, thinking about zones. So think about, like, you'll need a zone probably for annuals, and you might want to have a series or a large raised bed because you're going to want to be doing, crop rotations or succession planting or both, right? Then you might have some vegetables that are going to be in there year round, so maybe you need a spot for perennials. Bonus tip, don't forget sort of the in-between zones. So what I mean by that is you might have an area of your garden that gets really hot during the summer, and so maybe you're going to need to think about providing some shade. Or you might have an area in your garden where you're going to have vegetables a lot longer, like potatoes, and so you might not want to take up space in your regular annual beds. But if you think about it ahead of time, you can plan for that space. You can put your potatoes in grow bags, like I do along the edge of my garden so that I keep those raised beds free. In every civilization game, you never start with houses, right? You start with roads, infrastructure, resources. In gardening, you start with paths, you start with water sources and irrigation. You also start with structures. Bonus tip, if you live in a part of the country where you battle extremes, maybe it's extreme wind or extreme cold winters or super, super hot summers, plan for structure to either provide protection or extend your season. And you're gonna make your gardening easier and your planning a whole lot more straightforward. Now that your zones and your infrastructures are all in place, filling them in is easy. I use square foot gardening, which simply says how many vegetables of a certain type you can plant in a square foot. For example, if I'm planting radishes, I can plant 16 in a square foot. But if I'm planting something really big like a tomato plant, I can only plant 1. Then all you have to do, since your zones are there, is you simply plot out when you want those veggies to go in and when they need to come out to make room for the next. Bonus tip: look back at your sun paths and place your taller crops at the back of your rows and beds so that when the sun rises and sets and where it's pointed at your garden, it doesn't shade plants behind those taller plants. Unless you're trying to plan for shade, and maybe you live in an area that has some extreme sun, you can actually purposely plant taller plants to create some shade during the hottest parts of the day. By planning infrastructure first, just like a civilization game, I've created a system that makes it a heck of a lot easier to plan your garden and frankly, way more fun. If you're starting a garden, what's your first step? If you're starting a garden from seed for the first time, check out my next video on 5 proven steps to do just that. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.